Hello and welcome to this episode of the Whole Health of Rob Carney Podcast. And on this episode, we have our guest, Graham Lichtner, joining us. And Graham is the founder of Pillars of Growth, Mind, Body, Spirit. So Graham's a mind, body, spirit coach on a mission to awake the infinite potential within people, changing the world by first changing ourselves. So Graham and I sat down, he shared his story, talked about his past, how he got to where he is today. And we really touched on a number of great topics. We had a great conversation, a lot of back and forth, collaboration, creation together in the moment, building off each other. And Graham's just a great guy. He's currently located outside of Philly, but he will soon be moving to the San Diego area. He's a great coach, great human. So sit back, relax, and enjoy a wonderful conversation. So without further ado, Graham, welcome to the podcast, my friend.
Dude, super excited and grateful to be here today, man. It's a beautiful day, and this is making it that much better.
Absolutely, brother. So as we kind of just introduced you here, you are the founder of Pillars of Growth, Mind, Body, Spirit. What does that mean to you? What does that look like? What does the day in the life of a Mind, Body, Spirit, Pillars of Life coach look like for Graham?
Right. So there's a lot to unpack there, right? So I think we can start with Pillars of Growth, Mind, Body, Spirit, which is the company that I founded. And Pillars of Growth is all about bridging the gap between mind, body, and spirit to elevate your consciousness and elevate your awareness. I really believe, and we really believe, that when you awaken the infinite potential within yourself, you, in the process, gain the power to change yourself and change the world by thus changing yourself, right? So in the process of you putting in the work for yourself, you lead by example, and other people can begin to follow you. And that puts others in position to change themselves. And one by one, if we all do this together, right, we can make massive shifts for this world and for the consciousness of our species, etc. So as far as Pillars of Growth is concerned, I kind of just stumbled upon it through my own process and through my own personal growth and development. And that turned into, just the realization one day that, it's not just like the body, right? It's not just the mind. Like there's this other spiritual component, this I am, this eternal awareness that we have. And it's the combination of mind, body, and spirit that bridges the gap to the higher consciousness and awareness that puts us in a position to have amazing conversations just like this.
Awesome, brother. So I'd like to hear, how did you get to this point? What's your story? How did you get involved in health, wellness, spirituality? Like what led you to where you are today with Pillars of Growth from the very beginning of it?
Wow. So I'm probably just gonna start from when I was like a drug addict and a drug dealer, because I think that's probably the most relevant. I mean, but I guess with that said, though, is that really the most relevant, right? Because I think all of this really stems from like my childhood, right? Which I think it stems for a lot of us. And my childhood, I didn't really have a lot of self-confidence in myself. I was definitely bullied by people around me, and my dad, I believe, was unconsciously projecting what he wanted for me, what he wanted in his life onto me. And I was trying to live up those expectations, which obviously is a recipe for disaster. So all those things put me behind the eight ball as in regard to how I valued myself, right? I think it's obvious at this point that if you don't find value in yourself, I mean, other people aren't going to find value in you either, right? It's the same thing with love. Until you learn to love yourself, you're not going to find the ability to truly love someone else at that level. But moving from that point, I think I lacked both of those when I was younger. Right? I didn't really have value in myself, and I definitely didn't love myself. So I would constantly try and shift who I was and be whoever other people wanted me to be, so that I could be cool. I was telling one of my clients the other day that for some little kids looking at me, it's so funny. I'm sorry. I was telling one of my clients the other day that when I was younger, I was a really great swimmer. My dad was a fantastic swimmer. He went to the Olympic trials when he was 15 years old, and I had that ability. But because I had so little self-confidence in myself, even though I was a terrific swimmer and I won most of my races, and I had a real shot at being, a college athlete there and getting scholarships, all this stuff, I wanted so badly to please others because I thought that external validation would internally validate me, that I was willing to sacrifice everything that I was to be something that other people could be like, oh, you're cool now. Right. In the process, obviously, there is no value internally. There is no love internally. And that put me in a place where I was really self-conscious of myself. I judged myself on everything. Thus, I started to judge others, and I would project my own insecurity and inferiority onto all of them, which was a huge issue. And when I look back at it, obviously the reason for a lot of relationships friendships, intimate relationships, etc., all going south. It's very simple. I mean, when you project your insecurity and inferiority onto other people, you're basically setting them up to resent you at some point. So after all that, we'll move on to college. I started smoking weed when I was in middle school, but that turned into alcohol on another level as well. And then that turned into living with other roommates of mine who were drug dealers and drug addicts as well. And before I knew it, we were all, taking multiple Adderalls a day, with weed, with ecstasy, with all kinds of different drugs, just lots of drugs. So I'd say that drug addiction and being a drug dealer put me in a place where I really was the Jekyll and Hyde version of myself, where there'd be times where I'd be really, really aligned with who I am, and I'd be like, yeah, I like know who I am deep down, but the face that I was showing to the world wasn't that, right? And there's some really great photos of me on the internet somewhere from when I was in college, and you could just see it on my face, like how much different I was actually thinking. And underneath all that, there's still the same me, the person you're seeing today. But in the process of that, I truly lost myself. And through that journey and through that process of learning to look at myself in the mirror every day as someone I didn't really like, right, and unconsciously deal and put up with the fact that I wasn't being true to myself, it put me in position to be like very manipulative of other people, because I was manipulating myself, right? And that is a manipulation, my friends. When you are lying to yourself every day, you are manipulating yourself into thinking you are something or someone else. And you're naturally going to execute the same techniques onto other people, consciously or unconsciously. And so I think that phase of my life, and being a drug addict and a drug dealer, and having, my dad was a really great swim coach in the area. He coached thousands of people to success in swimming at a local high school. And for me to be the opposite of that was a really fucked up dichotomy that started to eat at me right through that time. And there were times where I was on like 6 different substances at once. I mean, when I was in college at like the height of I would call it my addiction. And I would say it was more psychological than physiological, but there was an element of the physiology, especially with the marijuana, that I was like, yo, I gotta have this. Like, I gotta chill. You know what I mean? So at any given time, there's psychedelics, there's performance enhancers, there's research chemicals, and then there's the regular stuff on top of that, right? So a combination of all that is a recipe for you to lose yourself at some point. And I think there was points in college where I literally completely lost sight of who I was. And my dad got cancer, and it was revealed to us that he had stage 4 cancer my junior year. And when that happened, I had like a real moment of clarity. One of the first moments of clarity I'd say I had, where I looked at him and he like walked into the room and he's like, I have cancer. I'm like, but I'm going to be all right. And I just like could see like it happening. I was like, no, you're not. I didn't say that to him, but at the time I was like, dude, there's no way you're going to survive this. Like, you're going to die. And I knew that, right, intuitively. Not like oh my gosh, like this is like a bad thing. Of course, like I don't want this to happen. But at the same token, it was just one of those moments where it was like, Graham, you need to get your shit together, dude. Like, you need to step up, right? And so through the process of the next year and a half, I got further into drug dealing, and I eventually got to a point where I put myself in position to have serious issues with law enforcement. And I got a clean break, and I was able to get out of that as my dad was like winding down his last 6 months. And so in that process of those last 6 months of being with him and healing myself in the process, when I stepped away from drugs and in general, we'll call it, I had a month where all I did was heal. And my healing was a combination of reading Game of Thrones and going to the gym. That's all I did for a whole month. And in that time, I really started to get in alignment with who I was again. I started to see myself in some of the characters, and naturally some of the characteristics and attributes that I always knew I had started to emerge. And before I knew it, I was starting to feel a lot more like myself again. Still was being tested in all areas of my life, but moving forward, as my dad approached his like final few months, we came to a place where we were in a much more mutual understanding of one another, and truly found that love that we had been looking for within our relationship. And I think that transition of him moving on in this life helped me to move on from the transition from a boy to a man. And that was the beginning of me finding a higher awareness for myself to go after the thing that I was passionate and found purpose in, which was fitness and a bodybuilding show. That turned into me having the realization that even in a bodybuilding show, it's not just the physique that's transforming. You're growing mentally by expanding your knowledge base, right? And you're growing spiritually by aligning yourself with the goal and the vision and pulling out the absolute most that you have to give and offer and being your most authentic self in the process. And I think that bodybuilding show I did really opened me up to the idea that it's really not just about the body. Like, it's a mind, body, and spirit transformation. It's these three that equate to one awareness, one higher consciousness.
Beautiful, brother. Thank you for sharing that. And a couple of big things that I just took away from what you just shared is in my coaching, what I call the I, we, all, is that we have to focus on ourselves first before we can truly help others. Because if we're not whole in ourselves and we're not loving ourselves, as you said, you can't really love someone else until you learn to love yourself. So the way I describe it is I, we, all. So first we focus on the I, then the we, which is like maybe your family, your partner, like you're close, very close knit, and then you can help everyone else. Because if you're trying to help everyone else, but you can't love yourself and you can't love those around you, I mean, how much good are you actually doing if you're hurting the ones closest to you? So that's kind of my point on what you took away from that. And then the other one that you touched on was the drugs, which are, for better or for worse, very common in society, and they have been for quite some time. It's not like this is a new concept. I don't want to call it a problem because we learn a lot from that. But my idea, in having done my own fair share of selling and using drugs, is that it tends to be a process of numbing, that we're avoiding those insecurities that you're talking about. It's like, well, I don't feel comfortable being with myself. I'm anxious, I'm nervous, whatever. I'm going to smoke some weed and just kind of forget about it for a while. So it's a process of numbing. And same thing with alcohol, especially alcohol, because you're literally numbing yourself to the point where you're not even thinking clearly. So that's what I find is an interesting perspective. That sounds like you kind of went through that same phase too, where you had some challenges in your life, which we all do. And like many of us, we turn to drugs as a way to escape, as a way to numb, as a way to forget. And now that you're on your path, you found the pillars of growth. How long ago was that? So you said that your father's with the cancer was your junior year. How long after that?
That was 2015. First of all, let's take a second back. So I love what you said about I, we, all. The way I say it is serve yourself, serve others, serve one world. It's the exact same thing.
Cool.
I love it, brother. Yeah, amazing. Cool. I love what you said about numbing with the drugs. I really do believe that is a reflection of our insecurity and our fear of dealing with our unconscious mind, right? Because if the longer we sit, the more it's like when at Fukushima, when they tried to like put all the radioactive waste in one of those cylinders, there's still stuff that's like foaming out.
Yep.
When we sit, all of a sudden that stuff starts to foam, and the longer we sit in silence, eventually that shit's gonna blow, right?
Absolutely.
And so this is like it's the Band-Aid. We love Band-Aids, right? Drugs are a Band-Aid, alcohol is a Band-Aid. So to your point, love it. As far as all that timeline for that stuff, in 2015, my dad passed away. In 2016, I graduated college, and that June of that year was my first bodybuilding show. And then after that, I started fitness coaching, and I was like, okay, cool. I made this transformation. I really believe I can help other people. And this sounds like this is a great way for me to work on myself, to serve other people, and to work towards something bigger. I knew there was something more. And in the process of that next, 8 months, I cultivated the idea for Pillars of Growth. And in 2017, I founded the company.
Very cool, man. It's funny because, we have had a very similar story. I graduated college 2016. I traveled a bunch. And then, my business I started in 2018 fall. So very similar timeline, which I think is interesting, just how we've connected. I don't even remember. Was it just on Instagram?
No
Is that
idea.
how we stumbled? It was
that was it. Yeah, it was on Instagram. I think I found you, and I just reached out to you.
Yeah, it was so crazy, some crazy synchronicity that all of a sudden it was
I know what it was. You were hosting a retreat in Colorado, and I was like, dude, that's awesome.
Oh, that's right. Right.
I had just hosted a bunch, and I was like, dude, we out here, man. Keep it up. That's so cool, man. You're out there like you're building rock piles and stuff. Yes. Cooking over the fire, dude.
Yeah, we got many more to come. We're doing another one this summer, so But yeah, so a question I had for you, obviously when we're on this journey, you said you had that first awakening your junior year in a sense, or your first moment of clarity as you worded it. When was the last time, most recent moment where you were reminded, I'm in the right place, I'm on the right path? Like, what was the last major moment of clarity that you had?
That is a really good question. The last time that I had that moment was very recently, um, within the last week. Um, but what was it exactly? Oh, um, one of my current clients that I'm working with has worked with 5 other very big name coaches in the coaching space or business coaching space. And I think so. I think before I get into that, I think it's important for me to point this out. With a company like mine, Pillars of Growth, Mind, Body, Spirit, it's a very, very wide it's a wide valley in which so many different things can be covered and talked about and built around. It's a lot. There's a lot of room for growth, mind, body, and spirit. There's so many things, infinite things that we can do. And so I think that the challenge for me has been to keep my head and keep myself grounded without getting too far up in the clouds. Because I have ideas for the rest of my life on what I want to do with this.
Yep.
There's infinite possibilities. I wrote them out when I first started. But like to actually build those castles in the sky, we really do need to build the staircase. And so I think that the hardest part for me in the last 2 years has been like, which direction do I need to be now? Like, where am I supposed to be now? Like, I know how this is going to grow. I know what's going to grow into, but it's like a garden. You plant all these little seeds, and sometimes you just got to let them grow the way they're going to grow, and it'll be natural and it'll be beautiful. And so I think for a while it was like, okay, do I need to focus more on like the MBS stuff, particularly with those types of clients, or do you need to focus more on the coaches with leaders and the legends and that whole dynamic, which is a little different? Obviously, MBS bleeds into it, and that's the core and thesis. But I still think that it's sometimes difficult for us as entrepreneurs to navigate our own waters because we're so close to the source, that tunnel vision. So in the last week, one of my clients that I'm working with right now, who's worked with, 5 other business coaches, spent 50 grand on coaches in the last year and a half. She told me that what I've done with her, she has never done with any other coach before, and that she doesn't know of anyone out there doing anything remotely like what we're doing. And that, I think, made me feel like, because I think that it's one thing for me to just be externally validated. Oh, I'm really great. It was another thing for me to be like, the system I'm building is in alignment with what needs to be for this to become what I want it to become. So I was like, okay, cool. Like, this is really working. It's one thing for me to know something's terrific, which I often do. I'm like, this is going to be awesome. But it's another thing for it to be like, the system is working so well that I've worked with all these other people and they're not, they weren't able to deliver what it is you were trying to deliver, but they're trying to deliver the same thing as you are. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. I like that.
Okay. So that gave me the nod that like I'm very much barking up the right tree, and that my current mission, which is one of the current missions I have, obviously one to awaken the infinite potential within ourselves, changing the world by first changing ourselves, but for leaders and the legends, which is to redefine coaching in the 21st century. And this is how it's done. It's done from the inside, internal work. It's an actual it's a real career. It's like an apprenticeship. You have to learn. You can't just like run into it and expect to be very good. It's something you have to really build skills. Like, there are natural skills you build. I mean, I don't have to tell you, you know this, right? So I think that in the last week, having that conversation was like, cool. Because at times, it's very easy for you to be just super hard on yourself, especially if you are in a scarcity mindset, which is what the internet makes you feel like you need to be in, because you're not doing as well as this person. This person's posting content to put you in scarcity, trying to manipulate you into feeling like you suck right now and you're not as good and you're not moving as fast. And it's very hard sometimes to fully, move that out of your realm of consciousness. I think I do a really good job of not getting that in my head. And I really feel like I do my best work when I'm just in that abundant place. I don't care about the money. That's not a thing. It's just about serving at the highest level I possibly can and allowing my action to speak for me without even having to do all that stuff.
Totally.
And so I think this last week has put me in a position to feel like, okay, cool. And I feel like I get one of those like little thumbs up, like every month I get them. I feel like whenever I'm looking, you know what I mean?
Totally. And one thing I like what you just said there is about the abundance mindset and the serving over looking for the money. And it's funny because last month I had a pretty good month in my business in terms of growth, but towards the end there, I was trying to hit numbers. I was like, all right, I want to break this record. I want to do better on this. And that's when things started to slow down. I was doing so well. Then all of a sudden, and I caught myself. I did it for about 5 days, which, I mean, luckily, I used to go longer with, so I'm getting better at that, but I'm still guilty of, there's times it's like, all right, I was so focused on giving value for 3.5 weeks. I was doing great. Things were going great. And then all of a sudden I shift towards, all right, how can I make more money? How can I do this better? And there's like, then all of a sudden all that good stuff goes away for that short period of time. And I'm lucky enough that I recognized it within a few days, that I was like, wait a second, my mindset just shift from how am I giving value to how am I getting? And to me, that was a big moment that I was like, wow. One, I was impressed with myself that I went 3.5 weeks of straight going for value, but then it was like, wow, I still have some work to do. The fact that I still had that, how can I get? It's not about getting, it's what we give. And so with that being said, and I think that's from a place of scarcity. So what are things that you utilize, tips and techniques that you use with yourself, with clients, with anyone who asks you how to get into that abundant mindset? Because as you said, the pressure is against us from anywhere we look in the media to be in that scarcity mindset. So what are tools you use to kind of shift from scarcity to abundance?
This is a great conversation that I think everyone who's a coach or just in general needs to hear. It's important to look at the issue, right? Because the issue and the problem is that the leaders that we look up to, right? What the second pillars of growth truth, or the value that we hold really dear at Pillars of Growth, is lead and others will follow, right? Lead and others will follow. When you lead, you put people in position to follow you, because you're not worrying about what they are thinking or what other people are thinking. You're doing what you know to be right, basing it on your integrity, etc. And when you do that, people will naturally want to follow you. Here's the issue. The people that were the first ones on social media are naturally who? The marketers. And so what do? They flood the media. And how do they learn? They learn from other people who put them in scarcity. So all of a sudden, scarcity tactics are passed down from person to person to person to person, and all of a sudden you're flooded with it. So naturally, what does that mean? It means as coaches, we have a predisposition to be in scarcity, because that's what we're taught. So it's so interesting. Like we help people unlearn and then relearn. But in the process, we forget that we have to unlearn and relearn the scarcity mindset coming around attracting clients, around classic business principles, around finances, etc. So I think it's important for us to first become aware of that. If we're not aware of the fact that we are in scarcity, because as soon as we value our business as numbers, we aren't playing the infinite game, right? Yes. We aren't playing the I want to be here in 100 years. We're playing the I just want to maximize for me, right? So I think the most important thing and the way for us to stay away from scarcity is to recognize what abundance really is to you. You have to understand what that really means. What is abundance? Abundance really is being in the moment and truly understanding that you already have enough. Like you really are happy with what you have. That's not something that I don't even think there are tips and tricks for. Like you have to actually accept it.
Yes.
You have to accept, like, this is who I am, this is where I'm at, and this is what I value in my life. And if you can do that, then you can come to a place where you are so happy to just wake up and serve your clients, serve your business, do what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, that doesn't even matter to you. And naturally, by serving at the highest level of which you are capable, people will talk about you to other people. They will come to you and you'll build your business just from that place of abundance. And so, to be honest with you, when I think about abundance, and I'm not really sure what everyone's religious preferences are. I don't really align with anything specific at the moment, but I think the story of Jesus Christ is a really great example of abundance. Like he wasn't going around blasting everyone, manipulating them into feeling like they need to embrace his love. He was just being loving. And you felt it and you decided if you wanted to believe in it or not, which I think that's a great example. And so how does that translate to us? Well, if we just serve at our highest level and elevate our state of being, we will naturally give off that vibration and frequency that they'll want to come up to. And thus you create abundance by just being abundant.
Yes,
right?
That's the big part. It's the being. I think that's the key word there, is just being. And I noticed, I was listening to, are you familiar with Dr. Joe Dispenza?
Oh yeah, of course.
So so I was listening to his Becoming Supernatural book on Audible yesterday. I was listening to part of it. And one of the things he talks about is just how does a happy person walk? How does a wealthy person walk? How does a wealthy person breathe? Like all these little things. And it's like, I found myself just like, I was cooking my breakfast, so I was listening to it. And I was like, I'm just sitting there smiling, like, yeah, like this feels pretty good. And like, and you feel
Right?
that. And like, life
Yeah.
is pretty damn good. Just how it is right
Amazing.
now. It's like, if I died today, I mean, I don't want to, but like, I feel like I did my best. And I think that's a cool thing to experience. And then, so the first part, in my opinion, is being, as you just said, it's being that, feeling that, and exuding that energy, putting that out to other people. And the second one, I think that I found to be very helpful is gratitude,
Yeah.
and just making sure that we are grateful for what we already have. And also too is just like when we're in a state of gratitude, it's hard to feel in scarcity. You can't be in scarcity when you're gratitude because naturally you are feeling the abundance of all that is great. So I found that exactly what you said, being what you want to be in terms of, even if you're not there yet in the physical realm, if you are there
Right.
mentally and spiritually, you have that. And then it's just a matter of time before the physical reality manifests itself in that reality. So being it, I think, is the first step. And then the second part in terms of like getting there, I think, is the gratitude.
Right. Or even think about this, right? So when I think about it, it's like, what are most people's issues stemming from? Most people's issues are stemming from the fact that there's something in the past they haven't been able to accept.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can't accept things, you're never going to be able to face them. And Pillars of Growth truth number 8 is courage. Overcome yourself, right? We have a fear of going back to the place we were at. So we stay away from it as much as possible. We surround ourselves with people that aren't like that. We go to places that are not like that. We change our environment, all this stuff, without actually solving the issue. Like, you're still bleeding. You're just pretending like you're not, right? So I think by going back and working to accept it, we can then start to become mindful
Mm-hmm.
of where we're at now, which will lead to that place of gratitude, which
Yep.
will help us and enable us to shift to a new state of being because our awareness is shifted.
I love it. And,
Yeah.
and I think what's interesting too is just the fact that it doesn't have to be all that complicated either. I think that, as we talked about, with the feeling of scarcity that the social media can put out there, it's like we see these people with these fancy cars, these boats, and it's so stereotypical. Like the American dream is like you need a house, a boat, a front yard with a picket fence and all this stuff. And it's like, at the end of the day, when I was living in Sri Lanka, walking barefoot, these people don't have toilets. They don't have fresh running water a lot of times. That was one of the happiest times I've ever been. I didn't have any of that stuff. There was no
Right.
material wealth. I was just surrounded by people that's all they knew. So they were happy. They didn't know any better. And so I think that we need to recognize the fact that we can be happy right here, right now, in the present moment. And that's where I think tools like meditation are very helpful, grounding ourselves in the present moment, breathing, yoga. And in my opinion, one of the biggest issues we have is that we're so stuck on our heads.
Oh,
We need
yeah.
to get back into our body. And that's where the breathing, yoga, meditation, journaling, getting things out of the head, doing any sort of exercise, as I'm sure you're very familiar with, that's a meditation in and of itself. So I'd like to hear your daily routine in a sense. Like, what are your
Great.
essentials? Like, or let's say weekly, because let's
Mm.
say you don't work out every single day. Sometimes we need a rest day. In one given week, what are the things that you say are essential? I have to do this every single week or
Yeah.
day.
Great question. You touched on so many brilliant things there. Just so much. And for everyone listening, I mean, I think that I think the beauty of what we're doing right now is the collaboration, right? I said being, he says gratitude, then we trace it back to acceptance, mindfulness, gratitude, being. Like, that's collaboration, right? Which is creation. And creation naturally raises the vibration. I mean, I'm fired up. I'm like out here at some random, I don't even know where I'm at, right? I have no idea where I'm at. And like, when we're talking about abundance, it's like, dude, this is good enough for me. It's a beautiful day. Like, it's sunny and the air is coming through and I feel it. And I'm grateful because what more could I ask for than this opportunity? There's nothing more I could ask for. This is exactly what I've been asking for, right? I don't like that other stuff isn't stuff that I asked for. It's stuff that my ego feels like it needs to have. So it feels validated. That is a difference, right? So anyway, when we're talking about what I do in a week, that's a non-negotiable. I think that there are a few things that are non-negotiable, and this is stuff that I'm like very passionate about in the MBS program, the Mind Body Spirit program, and that's it's walking every day. walking for no other reason than just to walk, not to
Yes.
burn calories,
Yes.
not to get your steps in,
Mm-hmm.
just to walk, right? Walking. It provides you with such it's an amazing adventure if you can get yourself to a place where you can be mindful of the adventure.
Yes.
If you can really become present in the walk, everything you see is fascinating, and you can observe things that you just were unaware of before, including your own unawareness. The second thing, so we can call that exercise, right? In one way, shape, or form. The second thing is reading and writing. To expand the mind is one of the most beautiful gifts that we could ever offer ourselves. And Einstein said it best: once you expand your mind, it can never go back to its original dimensions.
Mm-hmm.
So reading to provoke thoughts and writing to develop them is beyond essential. If you aren't developing your own thoughts and ideas, you are literally just mimicking and going by the same things everyone else is saying. Thus, you're living in a state of dogma unconsciously, right? You're living by other people's structures. So to write every day and to read every day, to expand the mind, and then to extract the biggest things, the most important things, the essential things from your mind and remove them from your mind to put them in a place where you can develop them and create something new is beyond essential. And I think additionally, meditation or quiet time for yourself to reflect and just be present. I think those three things are without a doubt the most important. And when it comes to me and how I structure them in my day, I think above everything comes my wake up time. When I wake up between 3 and 5 a.m., I have days that are just the most amazing adventures that I could ever dream of. I mean, it's so quiet in the morning. It gives me 2 hours of personal development before I even get to personal development. When I have 2 hours to read, write, think, be before I even get to the gym, like I'm in a totally different euphoric state when I walk in. Like I'm so authentic in that moment. How much more real could I be when I just worked on myself and mind, body, and spirit for 3 hours, right? And so I think a combination of exercise daily, at least an hour in some way, shape, or form, quiet time for yourself, whether it's the morning or night, writing each and every day, reading each and every day, and walking consistently. I think those things are essential, and whatever order is the order. I think that one thing that I really think about a lot is is flow within structure. And what do I mean by that is like I have this MBS system that I live in every day, which is a mind, body, spirit practice, or sharpening the sword, if you will, or however you want to talk about it. But it's the forging of myself into who I want to be. That's what those activities do. It's what personal development does. And so I think beyond that, coming to a place where you can also integrate really great conversation with really, really amazing people is like the cherry on top, right? Because we are social creatures, and it's amazing, Graham, to have all this personal development, but what's going to make it that much better? Well, it's the communication you have with other people, because every conversation you have offers the opportunity for you to learn something about them and yourself. It brings you to a new state of awareness if you're mindful enough of the conversation. But more importantly, if I've just done 3 hours of personal development, how am I going to show up in that conversation? I'm going to be extremely present. I'm actually going to listen. I'm going to be there for that human. Thus, I can offer that human an ear. Perhaps they're going through something really, really tough, and they just needed me to be there, right? So what does this do? All of the things I'm talking about, this personal development, it brings you to a much, much, much more present state of being. And when you're in this present state of being, there is no hurry. There is no scarcity. There is only abundance. Tell you what, if you get up at 3 a.m., at 9, you're going to be like, I'm abundant as hell. It's been 6 hours and people are just starting their day. I got all the time on earth. I'll talk to you for an hour. I got plenty of time. Like, what's going on, right? So I think a combination of those things, there's no necessarily right or wrong way. Like I said, the structure and the flow within that is just, these are the things I do every day. I don't always do them in the exact same order, but they're around the same time, and I just let them flow. For example, this morning, I didn't have time to do my writing or my reading. I got right into work because I was feeling creative, and that was cool. I went to the gym and I was able to pick it up there, and I'll pick up Slack later this afternoon, or pick up Slack, this evening. And I think that is key, is to know what's your structure. Like, what are the things that are non-negotiable for you, and how do you want to integrate them into your life so that you don't feel like, oh my gosh, I didn't do this thing today. Like, my day's terrible now because I didn't write this morning, versus like, okay, cool, I have an opportunity to write later. It's going
And
to be amazing.
I like that a lot, because that's very similar to my philosophy, is that when I'm working with clients, I give them a bunch of tools for their toolbox. So whether that's a few different Tai Chi moves, some different breath work moves, some different meditations, going for a walk, journaling, reading, writing, whatever the case may be. But the fact of the matter is, as you said, it doesn't have to be at 5 a.m. I do this, at 5:15 a.m. I do this. It doesn't have to be that structure, because I think then you lose that. One, you lose the sense of freedom. Two, you're losing the sense of abundance, because you're not giving yourself that space. And I think that it's so important to give ourselves space, because the space that we give is where the magic happens. And if we say, I do 30 minutes of this, I do 30 minutes of that, that's great if that's a parameter, but keeping that as a hard stop, I think is I don't want to say detrimental, but you're lingering, you're hurting yourself in a
Yeah,
sense.
dude, you're taking away the opportunity for you to be creative and experience new things, which I think is a huge issue with our culture. I can't tell you how many coaches I talk to who are like, I want to increase my productivity. I'm like, okay, so what have you created? Like, oh, well, nothing. I'm like, so you continuously want to be in a process, but that is the opposite of creativity. Creativity happens in the abyss. That's where the
Yes.
beauty happens, right? So the thing that they actually want is not what they're saying they want by their actions, right?
Yes.
And so I think you put it really well too. And the fact that these are tools. And you know what I think this stems from is old agreements that we formulated, that entrepreneurs have this system, and this person says I do it this way, so I'm going to listen to every single thing this person says. Again, coming down to the fact that you're not taking time to actually think for yourself.
Yes.
It's great that worked for them. Does that mean it's going to 100% work for me? Maybe, maybe not. And if it's not, great. Make a new agreement, such as long as I do 20 minutes of mind, 20 minutes of body, 20 minutes of spirit each and every day, personal development on myself, I've had a great day and I've served myself.
Yes.
Doesn't matter if it's all at night, all in the morning, broken up, 5 minutes here. It doesn't matter. But you have to make that new agreement with yourself by first breaking the old one. It's okay, Graham, if we don't do it by the fucking minute.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay? It's okay.
Yeah.
Life's going to still be great.
Yeah.
In fact, now that it's not by this minute, I'm able to enjoy this beautiful moment here that I never would have enjoyed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is what it comes down to. Understanding that by not doing something that you think is productive, you could open up the gateway for the greatest idea in the history of the world.
Yes.
And
yes.
that's the thing. We think that it's only possible if we do it their way, which is ridiculous, because we all know the most creative, innovative people didn't do it anyone else's way. They just had a way and they did it their way, and they didn't worry about it. They just had an idea. They acted on it. But I think you said it best. In order to be creative, you have to create the space for it.
Yes.
We lose ourselves in the process and productivity. And sometimes it makes me just want to kick myself in the head multiple times. Or my new favorite, dunk contests. Instead of hurting people, why don't we just make them feel a different sensation? So I set them up at this dunk thing and I throw a tennis ball at it and they plop into the freezing cold water. Okay, oh shit, now I know. I probably don't need to worry about this that much, right? So I think to your point, it really is an epidemic amongst entrepreneurship in the 21st century. And that's just a reflection of leaders who are unaware of themselves.
Yes. And I think one thing I really like is that you said that the way someone succeeds is not how everyone's going to succeed. And for instance, I'm sure you're familiar with Gary Vaynerchuk.
Of course.
He has a very, I'm going to work my ass off every single waking moment. And that works for him. That works for me in periods. But I'm not going to work 18 hours a day every single day because I'm going to burn myself out. And I can do that when I have a destination that's like, all right, I have this creative energy. I want to use it. Yeah, I'm going to work it, but once that energy is out, I'm not going to push through that emptiness. I'm going to recharge and take that step back. And you wouldn't believe how many to-do lists, which I've actually renamed I get to-do lists, so that I'm trying to reframe that in my brain. How many I get to-do lists that are unfinished because I started working on them. I was like, this actually isn't important. I thought that this was important. I made a list because I had the idea this is important. I started working on it and decided this is not in my best interest. And then I got an idea when I started that because I was procrastinating. And in my opinion, if you're procrastinating, it's probably either the wrong timing or it's not important. And a lot of times I find that these things I put on my I get to-do list are not important. And that's fine. But I tried them and I recognized that, I don't have to check everything off. But I want to leave myself open to realizing that, as you said, if I'm doing my personal development every single day, even if I don't have any successful items I checked off the list. I'm growing every single day, and I'm learning about myself, and I'm giving value. And yeah, there's some days where I write an entire blog post, record a podcast, create 2 videos, do 16 different things. Then there's also the next day I might not accomplish anything, but I grew because I still learned. I took the time to reflect and absorb and revamp myself with new energy. So I think it's not always about the boxes we're checking off, but more so about the journey and the growth that's happening in that process.
1,000%. And I think I want to backtrack just a hair, because I think Gary Vee is the most misunderstood person on the planet. I don't think people actually get how much he loves building business.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Like, he loves it. That is what he loves to do.
Yeah.
So think of the thing you love to do the most, and that's how he feels doing it. What I'm noticing is that people are telling themselves that they love it as much as him, and then trying to mimic him, and then like, oh my gosh, I'm not doing it. It's like, because you don't actually love it.
Yep.
You are lying to yourself because you see something in him that you want to aspire to. Maybe it's the fact that he's so successful. Maybe it's the fact that he's super open. Maybe it's the fact that he's doing what he loves every day. But he's only the first person to tell you, you don't actually get how much I love this.
Yeah.
That's why I do it every day. And he doesn't work on the weekends.
Yes, exactly.
He posts so much content that he makes you feel like he is, but he doesn't. He spends it with his freaking family. So he works 5 days, which is what everyone else does. He works more hours in those days, don't get me wrong. He makes every minute count, but like, we're just so unaware of that. And so we put him on this pedestal of like, he works 300 hours a week. He works more time than there are in the week. And like, he does it every second because he's just so, it's like, dude, you just don't love it as much as him. And that's so okay. You don't need to. You don't need to buy the jets. You don't need to have $1 billion company if you don't want to. Yep. If you want to, then great. If you don't, then it's okay. And I think that's the issue, is that as entrepreneurs, which I believe that 80% of the people in the game aren't actually entrepreneurs. And that's the problem. They think they are, but they're not. And how you can tell is if you ask them their vision, mission, values, and what they want for their company in 100 years, if they can't answer that fucking question, they don't know what the hell they're doing. Like, you have to know. Otherwise, why did you start this thing? Yep. It needs to be like beyond long term. Like,
what's your why?
I'm building something.
What's your why?
Like, it needs to be as deep as you can get. Like, because that's the point in which other people are going to relate to your message. And the deeper it is for them, and the more they can download that message and that vibration and frequency, the more compatibility you're going to have, the more understanding you're going to have, the less friction you're going to have, and naturally, this thing is going to grow further, longer, and faster, and more. What's the word I'm looking for? Methodical. But I think everything you said about the to-do lists and all that stuff, I mean, I started doing writing down my goals every day like years ago. But one thing that I started doing in the last year that I found to be a lot more effective for me, and I actually kind of tweaked some stuff that I learned from Dr. Joe Dispenza, and I added it to my journaling every day. But instead of writing out like I don't title it my goals anymore, or like goals for the date. I actually just date my entry, and then I go my life, and then I just write about my life as if these things are not as if these things are happening in my life. And so I just write in the present about how I actually feel about that thing. And what I've noticed is that I'm actually able to change my frequency and vibration just from my writing. Like, just from writing how I feel, and writing how this thing I'm dealing with impacts me, and writing how my client told me that she's worked with 5 other business coaches, but this is the thing. Leaders and the Legends is the thing that has been able to get her to a new level of being, level of consciousness expansion for herself. Like, that literally shifts me. And then my goals intertwine with my actual entry of how everything flows. Instead of separating it, which is what everyone else does, just integrating it all into your life and allowing that to just be your level of being, I found to be a really unique and fun and fruitful way for me to incorporate all those principles into something that's giving me a different result, a much more holistic result, and one that's less focused on the numbers and crossing boxes off, and more focused on me and my quality of life and moving the ball forward.
Beautiful. I love it. And I'm going to start using that, the writing about my life in the present moment, and using that as
awesome.
I like that. So thank you for sharing that. And
yeah,
I want to start wrapping up here just as we're running out of time, but I wanted to, well, we're not running out of time. I have other obligations that we have an abundance of time.
We're in abundance, baby. Yeah, let's go here. Oh, but dude, hold on, stop. This is so important. Everyone listening, that is what it means to be aware. Is to stop yourself in the moment and go, no, that's not actually what I meant. It's correcting ourselves. It's unlearning and relearning that the truth is that I have an abundance of time, but I have other obligations. And we were under the agreement that we had 45 minutes. So we're doing exactly what we said we were going to do. We're right on time. Boom.
Perfect. Appreciate that. I like that. All right. So two closing questions for you here. A little bit different than we've talked about. First of all, what just made me think about, we said Gary Vee doesn't work on weekends. What's something that you don't share on social media that people may not know about you based on if they follow you?
How many breaks I take? I take breaks whenever I feel like taking a break. I just stop. Like I usually do a 15-minute shavasana between 10 and 11. So I go like 5 hours in the morning, 6 hours in the morning, hardcore. I take 15 minutes shavasana. I just detach, and I'm at a point now in my practice where I can get into theta within a minute. Yep. Within a minute. And in a minute, I'm just like unplugged. And then I come back 15 minutes later, like on the dot, and I'm like, woo, let's go. Right? That little reset, recharge. It's like putting your phone down and plugging it in. It charges a little faster. It's like that. I do that in the afternoon. I think that's one of the things for sure.
Well, I can tell you something that's crazy that I noticed right on that same note is, so as you've probably been seeing, I've been doing the Ice and Iron group with a couple of other buddies where we're doing the men's meetup. And so that's like we're doing work in, workout, breath work, ice bath. So I was already tired before that. And after going to that for 4 hours, I was exhausted. And so I went home and I was like, I need to sleep for 3 hours. But instead, I went into a meditation. After 25 minutes, I was like kind of in that half awake, half asleep. I woke up and was like, it's got to be like dinner time. And it was like, it had been 25 minutes. I thought it had been 3 hours, but I felt so refreshed simply because I can get into, as you said, into that deep meditative state so much easier. And we can restore our bodies. And once we practice that skill, which goes back to what you said earlier, things take time to develop. It's a skill.
Oh, yeah.
And now that skill is being developed, that was a huge moment for me just on Sunday that I was like, holy shit, I thought that was 3 hours. That was 25 minutes. And I felt recharged. So I love that you brought that up. And final two questions here. First one, what's your biggest fear? Or do you have one?
Good question. Can you see me?
Yeah, I can see you.
Okay. My girlfriend asked me this the other night. What's my biggest fear? I don't know. I don't know. I thought I knew, and then I was like, I don't think that I would allow that to happen. You know what? That's not true. My biggest fear is extreme chaos. Like that to me is like very, very frightening, because in extreme chaos, people just revert back to their primal ways. And that is like the opposite of where I'm at in my life right now. I trust myself to do the right things in those moments. I actually think about it pretty frequently, to be honest with you. But at the same time, I'm not necessarily fearful of it. Like it's weird. Like I am, but I'm not. I know that things are going to be good. I just have that intuition. But that I've experienced that before, and that is a time where I am fearful, because anything can happen in those moments, and those things are irreversible. You know, I was in brawls in college at my old house. We threw parties with 30 people fighting, like with bottles and weapons, and I was like, "This is out of control. Like we're one fucking swing away from killing somebody accidentally." Right? So I think honestly, man, that's just extreme chaos. And I think that probably scared me when I was younger too. Chaos of the mind, chaos of the unconscious. Like what is really happening beneath the surface of my conscious awareness. And I think, you know, psychedelics helped me to, well, it took a roller coaster ride through the freaking dark and ended up in a place of the unconscious and was like, okay, freaking out right now. But
psychedelics wouldn't do that. What are you talking about?
I think I'm alive. Okay. I'm alive. Okay. This is happening, right? And so I think the organization of my own inner self over time has put me to a place where that is like a much, much smaller fear. But I think that would be the one, is just extreme chaos it's interesting. Like at one end of the spectrum, extreme chaos will lead to a new blossoming of something completely different. Yes. But at the other end of the spectrum, you know, it's completely ambiguous. You have no idea what's going to happen. So I think chaos is insanity. It's just like there's no reason in it.
Yeah,
it just is. Right. So that's probably it.
Cool. All right, then final question for you here. If you were to die today and there's one quote that people would associate with your name and your face, what would that be?
I believe that the quote that they would associate with my name and face. Boy, this is good. Let me think for a second.
Let's think. You're scrolling through Instagram. You see a picture of you, and there's a quote on it. Like it's so often done with Albert Einstein.
It'll definitely be legends find a way.
Cool. I like that a lot.
Yeah, that'll be it when I die for sure. Because that's the thesis of everything I'm doing. It's overcome yourself, overcome adversity, and when you become the legend, you're automatically becoming the king or queen in your mind. When you're the king and queen of your mind, you have the power, but you also have the discernment to do the right thing by other people and with that position of power. And I think that is what it means to be a legend, is to know right from wrong and live in your truth and in alignment with who you are and your values, and be a generative person, one that adds value to the world.
Beautiful. I love it, man. Well, this has been an incredibly eye-opening conversation. Epic. This has been a lot of fun. I'm excited to get this out to the world. And so to everyone listening, where can they find you? Where can they learn more? Do you have a website? Do you use social media? What's the best place that people can find you, or all the above?
Right. So I think that the best place for people to find me is Facebook, Graham Lichtner, Instagram at Graham.Lichtner, or YouTube, Graham Lichtner. Any of those places are going to be amazing. And my name is spelled Graham, like the cracker. And then Lichtner is Lichtner. Any of those places are great. I don't have a website. I used to have one, but I found that I would get irritated about how often I needed to change stuff, and I was like, this isn't even helping right now. I don't need to do that. I just need to spend time serving. So I just started doing that instead. So yeah, any of those places are a great start. I think that if you enjoyed this conversation, first of all, obviously thank you to you, brother, for hosting this conversation and for having me on. I really appreciate you giving me the space to just let it rip. And I think it's also important to note that when I was talking about that good conversation earlier, it makes a great day. This is what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about who won the Sox game last night. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm talking about what is happening in your life, and who are you, and how can we have a better, more in-depth conversation, and what great ideas are you thinking about, and how can we make this world a better place? So I think this was a great example of that. And I think that if you want to know more, obviously check you out. And if you want to know more about what I'm about and Pillars of Growth and Mind, Body, Spirit and all that stuff, I post content every single day. And if you really enjoyed this conversation, feel free to reach out. I love talking with everyone, and I especially love people who are really curious.
Beautiful. Well, brother, thank you for hopping on. Thank you for all your insights. Thank you for the great work you're doing, spreading the love in this world. And we'll talk very soon, my man.
Hey, my man, thank you so much. I just appreciate you beyond belief. And I'm very excited to get to meet you in person and do one of those meetups with you, the Ice and Iron.
Hell yeah, brother.
Epic.
We'll save a spot for you. Whenever you're coming down to Boston, you let me know. We save a spot for you.
You know it, brother.
All right, brother. Have a great day, and we'll talk very soon.
Much love. Peace, people. Adios.
Peace. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Whole Health of the Rob Carney Podcast with our guest, Graham Lichtner. So you can find Graham, the founder of Pillars of Growth, Mind, Body, Spirit Coach, on his Instagram and Facebook and YouTube. And I'll put those links in the description box here if you didn't catch when he mentioned it himself. And as always, it's great to have incredible guests on here. So if you know of anyone who may be interested in being featured on the podcast, please shoot me an email at wholehealthconnections@gmail.com, or to reach out directly on my Instagram at wholehealthconnections, all one word. And as always, this podcast is brought to you by our superfoods, Purium Health Products, and Mushroom Revival. So these two groups are incredible superfood companies that are focused on creating the top quality organic products and being environmental stewards. So Purium will be the first company to be 100% plastic free by 2021 using biodegradable hemp pouches. And you can get $50 off your first order, or 25% off whatever is the greater amount of your savings by using the code WHOLEHEALTH at checkout. So you can go to iShopPurium.com to find your superfoods there. And also Mushroom Revival. Mushroom Revival is owned by Alex Dorr, my good friend from UMass Amherst, where we took classes together. And so Alex is also on a mission of helping the environment, where he plants one tree for every product sold across the world, mostly in the Amazon after those devastating fires they had recently. So if you want to check them out, you can go to mushroom-revival.com and use the code WHOLEHEALTH, and you'll save 15% on your every single order. So I hope that you enjoy the superfoods using the code WHOLEHEALTH for your savings with those two companies I've been so fortunate to partner with. And I really hope you enjoyed this podcast with Graham. So if you liked it, please do like it. Please subscribe. Please check out Graham's work, my work, and all the great stuff we have coming for you. So thanks for listening again, and have a great day.